Well, do you remember when you were kids, if you observed Christmas, how it seemed like Christmas moved as slow as molasses? It just took forever. Of course, now I'm not young anymore, and I'm a preacher, so December goes by like that. Of course, it happens that it gets to be rather busy. For example, last Sunday after my sermon, I started reading Charles Dickens. Oh, that's great fun. I enjoy that. And then the book club had a party, and we went to that. And then that was the same day. And then we came back here because it was World AIDS Day, and we observed that in the chapel, and I took part in that too. That was Sunday, 12-hour day. Monday was light. I'm very grateful for that because on Tuesday I was on the radio downtown at WGVU, and then our connections groups cooked lunch for the staff here. They did a great job. Boy, that was fun. And then on Wednesday we have our monthly demonstration for marital justice down at Rosa Parks. It was the last warm day, really, and a few of us turned up. God bless us all. And then Thursday, some of us staff went out to meet all our good members who are part of the Porter Hills retirement community. And then Friday, I was back at another radio station, both on the air and recording. And yesterday was an interesting day because I had to finish writing my sermon, at least when I think I'm finished, because every Sunday I have to rewrite it anyway. And then we had to go to Lansing because we have church members there, and then we came back from Lansing to the Schweitzer Guild. Well, let me put it this way: it was a 150-mile day. It was a full week. What can I say? And as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to say amen, read a little bit of Dickens, then jump off to Toledo to do a really good deed, but it's still 200 miles from here to Toledo, and I'll come back tomorrow. How do we all keep our bearings in December? It's hard, isn't it? I'm kind of figuring one of the reasons we're here is that this is the star, the pole star, that for a little bit we can take a breath, think on purpose, and then get back into the seasonal swirl after that. That's true every Sunday, not just in December, but it's pronouncedly and profoundly true right now, which is why the prayer I utter every week is all the more important, because if I don't give you some honesty, some reality, some humanity right now, you have not received what you need. Therefore, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. On the second Sunday in Advent, our thoughts turn to hope, as it says on the banner. The second of the four themes of the season as we practice them here at Fountain Street Church. And this year, I'm looking at each of those ideas, abstract ideas, through a person, a fictional person, a person in the Nativity story. Last week, I told you about Joseph and how he found reasons to be faithful, meaning trusting, when there wasn't even a good reason to have it. This week, I'm exploring what Mary tells us about hope. I'll tell you why that's an important connection in just a moment, but to prove my scholarly bona fides, so I'm not just talking out the side of my mouth, I did go and look up the stuff in all my theological literature, or at least as much as I could read between going to Lansing and various parties. In the world of little-known facts, I found out that Mary is a much longer, stronger, and more visible presence in the Quran than she is in the Christian Bible. There's a whole chapter devoted to her in the Quran, and she shows up elsewhere. In the Bible, while we think of her as a major player, in Matthew, she doesn't say a word. In Luke, though, she has a few things to say, and we'll come back to those in a minute. As I mentioned last week, miraculous pregnancy is not unique to Mary. God seems to get involved in a number of women looking to have children. including Elizabeth, Mary's kinswoman, and Abraham's wife Sarah, who was barren until she was 90 years old, and God promises a child. And of course, Sarah, being a woman of the world at 90, not 17 or 15, laughs at that thought. She was wrong there too. And then there's Hannah, the mother of the prophet Samuel, who prays for a child. And you can see that this is not a unique experience that Mary has. And we also know in our experience that Mary, though, is the dominant female presence in the scriptural culture that we live in. Of course, one can comment with some rue that, as ever, Mary is important only because she was somebody's mom, and it was a boy, too. So gender justice ideas do turn up. But I want to tell you, my thoughts today have nothing to do with her miraculous pregnancy or her being a mother in any particular sense of the word. I want to talk about the experience she had that might be universal to all women who ever are pregnant, and what that tells us about hope. Of course, the story, at least in Luke as we get it, and also in the Quran as it turns out, is that Mary is kind of not doing anything one day when an angel shows up, Gabriel. Luke says that she was, quote, much perplexed at this. But I got to tell you, if an angel showed up in my house without me seeing it coming, I would be more than perplexed. And in fact, the same word in a different form attaches to the same angel, Gabriel, when he shows up and tells someone else, Joachim, that he will have a son called John the Baptist. When Joachim encounters Gabriel, it says he was terrified. And so I'm thinking we should think that Mary was a little more than perplexed, especially since Gabriel's first words after he says, Hail Mary, are, don't be afraid. Very much what the shepherds will hear from the angels when they show up in another chapter. Basically, when an angel shows up, it's kind of scary by nature. So the angel says, fear not, I've got good news. These words of not fearing show up a lot. And of course, we modern people, we already know the story. We don't run into many angels appearing out of nowhere. We really don't feel the fear that is in the story. And I think that's a loss in some ways. The story of the Annunciation is of fear turning into hope. And of course, when you think about it, that's the whole story of the gospel. Fear turning into hope. And getting to hope is what happens with Mary's story, and that's where the instruction is valuable. But to get there, I got to tell you a different story. In my last year of college, which is now a really long time ago, I needed a course that would fit my schedule, but not one that took up too much work. We've all done it, haven't we? All righty. This is not a confession unique to me. And there was a course in Renaissance art history, and I said, that's the one. It required once or twice a week, I forget now if it was once or twice, going into what is essentially a darkened auditorium while slides of great paintings were shown and a disembodied professor would tell us what they were all about. I actually enjoyed it a great deal, although from time to time a nearby seat might start to snore. It was dark, after all. But what I remember a lot is that a certain subject turns up a lot in Italian Renaissance paintings, that of the Annunciation. Every artist worth his or her oil paint or fresco or tempera wanted to paint an Annunciation. And since everybody already knew the story, the art and the genius was in portraying it in a way that was eye-catching and distinct. And two renditions have stuck with me, one by Leonardo da Vinci and another by Sandro Botticelli. And I remember hearing about them in class, but many years later, I actually saw them in the paint, as it were, when I was in Italy. And as I've mentioned at other times, upon seeing works I'd seen only in books, they are stunningly alive when you see them up close and personal. In Da Vinci's version, Gabriel is almost prostrate He's spread out almost on the ground, holding out his hand in greeting. And there's Mary reading a book with a kind of, who, me, look on her face. She's clearly not comfortable with the angel, but she's keeping her composure. But the one that stuck with me was Sandro Botticelli. His Gabriel is doing the same bending down, but his Mary is about to fall over in a faint. She's literally tilting. Her eyes are closed. Her hands are saying, please don't. And yet there's Gabriel, not only holding out a word of greeting, but with a look on his face that says, do I have to catch her? Because she's about to fall over. And I'm telling you about this painting because that is what the fear is about.